Hey everybody, how are you guys doing today? This is Jim Prusak, physical therapist or physiotherapist here at the Pain PT, and I'm here to give you guys information, understanding, knowledge. Knowledge is power in terms of knowing what we're dealing with here with these chronic somatic symptoms or what's called neuroplastic symptoms, nociplastic symptoms, symptoms that don't have a structural or medical cause, which afflict and affect many, many people throughout the world. People are not understanding this. They're only looking at it from a physical, medical, structural angle. So if you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Again, this is evidence of the week. I bring to you every week some evidence around these conditions to give you guys the understanding and the knowledge and the truth here so that you can start to put this into practice. And today we're going to talk about adverse childhood experiences and go over this. There's so much research that's been done and this continued to come out around what we call these ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. Something I screen for in everybody I see. I think all doctors, all health professionals should be giving the ACE questionnaire to their patients because it is so impactful and it's an area that's not been looked at and severely neglected in patients. So today's paper is titled Adverse Childhood Experiences Are Associated with Mental Health Problems Later in Life. And this is an umbrella review of systematic review and meta-analysis. So again, I love these papers because they hold data from pretty much all the studies, all the good studies out there. They take a conglomerate of data and distill it down into an understanding. So it's not just one study, but it's multiple studies, as you're going to see here. And everybody, you know this already if you've been listening to my channel here, but these mental health issues that we'll talk about here create physical health issues, create physical symptoms in the body. That's the takeaway here, everybody, is that just because you have mental and emotional health things going on doesn't mean it's just in your head. It means it goes into your body and creates physical outputs, physical symptoms. Okay, we need to understand this. This is the truth. This is the whole premise of my work here is that physical symptoms are not only caused by physical problems. It's just not true. Yes, injuries, certain things that can happen in the body, there could be physical causes. But in many cases we see here, you're going to learn here, this is a huge number of people who have mental and emotional health issues from adverse childhood experiences that are not being addressed. And they end up with a lot of physical somatic symptoms in the body that are being treated only from a physical angle. Let's dive into today's study so you guys can understand and learn more the power of ACE scores and how they affect a person from a mental health perspective. I'm going to take you some of the background here. Again, adverse childhood experiences are many different things. They're stressful experiences or traumatic events that occur from basically infancy or adolescence from basically 0 to 18 years of age. And again, they've been proven through multiple studies to have a negative impact on a person's health and well-being. Okay, these ACE scores are common amongst low, middle, and high-income countries. So it's across the board. It doesn't matter what kind of economic or financial situation you're in. They occur with 2 in every 5 adults having at least one ACE score. So they're very common. Again, some of these things such as abuse, neglect, dysfunctional households before the age of 18 are linked with poor mental and physical health throughout life. Remember, the mental and physical health are intertwined. This is what we all need to understand here. Mental and emotional health is not separate from physical health. It's the same system, right? It makes sense. We're not cut off. Somehow we've cut off their head from the body, but that's not true, you know? So what happens here goes into your body. It makes a lot of sense. It's common sense. Been forgotten. So we see here that childhood maltreatment, I'm going to go through the data here today. They're talking from previous studies, significantly contributes to depression and anxiety disorders in children and adults. And this happens through various neurobiological mechanisms in the brain. We have other studies showing, I'm not going over today in particular, but there's been many brain studies showing that there are changes and alterations in the brain, okay, in some of these areas like the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hippocampus, memory center. And these structural brain changes that we see resulting from these ACE scores are what contribute to and cause these mental and emotional health issues and physical health issues in the body. And hence why we're working on the brain when we do the brain retraining work, shifting your brain, we're working at the teaching the unconscious brain new things, new patterns, working with things like your behaviors, your thoughts, your emotions, your attention. Those are the things we're focusing on here. Again, because of their upbringing, children who are subjected to abuse and neglect may be more vulnerable to mental health problems. Okay. And we see here again, they mentioned here that people who reported more ACE scores, the more that you have, they're more likely to report poor or fair health, a lower sense of well-being, poor access to medical mental health services, and be less satisfied with their lives. So what we need to understand here, everybody, is that just because this may have happened, how many years it is for you now in your past as a child between 0 and 18, doesn't mean that it's over with. It doesn't mean that, oh, it happened, a long time ago. No, it's still affecting us through the brain changes, right? So we need to understand that trauma, first childhood experiences can affect us now, currently. In fact, those early experiences really shape the brain and how the brain will be working in the present moment. And that's why we need to understand this, and we need to start to see specifically in your lives where this happened, what happened, work through some of these things, and work to shift the brain back into a more safe, settled state. Okay, so we see here there's lots of data. Again, in this review study, they wanted to look and see how much do these first childhood experiences, these ACE scores, contribute to mental health problems. Remember, the mental health, which is your brain, contributes to physical health. The anxiety and depression create many physical symptoms in the body. Those mental, emotional health conditions actually create physical health symptoms. That is a massive takeaway. You need to understand they're not just in your head, they're in your body as well. So in this particular study, lots of data. So they're not drawing off, like I said, one study. They're drawing off multiple studies. And you know how many people, how many participants they looked at here when they put all these studies together? Over 14 million people. So data from 14,707,614 study participants. That is a lot of data, everybody. That's not just 100 people or 1,000 people. It's 14, almost 15 million people from different studies. So a lot of heavy data here that we can draw off of. And what they found essentially here is that these ACE scores that people have that can, in children, in your life between 0 and 18, that can have physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, bullying, caregiver neglect, mental illness, drug use in the home, exposure to domestic violence, parent loss, divorce, things like this, they cause mental and physical disorders, including PTSD, depression, personality disorders in adult life, as well as these somatic symptoms that many of you are here to learn about. Okay, the other thing that survivors of these ACE scores have, and this is an area that we're trying to build in all of you, is reduced resilience. Okay, the psychological resilience, which is something I teach people how to start to build, that become more resilient. According to the research, 63% of people who had experienced negative things in the past were less resilient as adults. So it weakens our resiliency. Again, it's nobody's fault. Another word is self-efficacy, is our belief and our empowerment. It's weakened because of what happened to us. We're trying to build that up in ourselves. Same thing with worthiness. We're trying to build our self-worth. For a lot of people who are mired in shame, toxic shame, we need to build self-worth, resiliency, self-efficacy, belief, confidence, self-confidence. Okay, it's part of your recovery to shift your brain. Okay, they found here overall, through all this data, through all these people, through all these studies, that the risk factor here for mental health problems later in life globally, so around the world, from these ACEs was to be 1.66. Okay, and that's in line with previous studies. So what that basically means here is that there's a 66% increased risk of anxiety and depression later in life from having ACE scores, and this is significant. So that's a big risk factor, 66% increased risk, remember, of anxiety and depression occurring. And remember, anxiety and depression are what cause these somatic symptoms in the body. They're the result of anxiety and depression. They are anxiety and depressive physical symptoms you experience. This is your emotions, right? Back to our emotional state, our mental state. And I'm going to take you through some of the specific data they found here that dives in even more specifically here. Again, they mention how these ACE scores, right, can alter brain regions, right, responsible for fear, stress reactions, and emotion regulation. So these are some of the areas we also want to work on emotion regulation skills. I work with a lot of people on building how we work with our emotions in a more healthy way, because these emotions can kick up and cause somatic symptoms. And fear can more easily be provoked, right? That anxiety when we've gone through ACE scores, and that will kick out somatic symptoms in the body. Okay. And the brain's adaptation to stressful environments may cause abnormalities in mental health, right? Impairing the development of the prefrontal cortex, right? This is the area of the brain we're trying to build up more. Many studies show it's been weakened in the face of ACE scores, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, chronic somatic symptoms. Also, the hippocampus is affected, as well as the amygdala. Okay. So we see here that what can happen is that the child's brain is affected, right, structurally and functionally, when they have severe, frequent, or persistent adversity without a safety net they mention here of a caring caregiver. So again, the safety word comes into play here, as well as the words threat and danger, right? So the brain gets tilted more towards threat and danger from these ACE scores, which means the brain's going into more protective mode most of the time, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And we want to create safety now. So part of your recovery, everybody, is creating safety in your brain and the unconscious brain that it didn't have before. It wasn't naturally developed. We need to create it now. We need to develop internal safety and security, right? Safety and security, two really good words that we're trying to build in ourselves, part of your recovery. Okay, so they say here that, again, these stressful or traumatic experiences that we have from these ACE scores from our childhood, again, can change the brain regions that regulate fear, right? So we have we're more apt to become anxious more easily, more quickly over things that are pretty normal, right? It also it's affecting these brain regions that regulate stress reactions. Okay? We can get more easily stressed, usually highly sensitive people as well. So we react more easily and have difficulties with emotion regulation, okay, which is an area that we certainly want to work on, is the emotional area. Again, these neurological effects that just occur from these adverse childhood experiences raise the risk of mental health issues later in life if these ACEs are not recognized and addressed. And the earlier we can address them, the better, but we can address them starting now, because brain is neuroplastic. The brain can change, the brain can shift, but we have to do the work to shift it. Okay. And it says here that the individual's brain may have changed to adapt to living in a stressful or fearful environment. And this could also be a contributing factor. Okay. The prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus parts of the brain, which are important in memory and logical cognitive processes, may develop less as a result of these ACE scores, which could lead to abnormalities in a person's mental health. So again, we want to strengthen the prefrontal cortex, that's your thinking brain, your logical brain, the evidence mind. Okay, we need to have that working so we don't get hijacked as much. We call that amygdala hijack. The amygdala goes off at a high level and we just get overwhelmed by that. We're trying to build resiliency and ability to handle and cope and respond to stressful experiences to reduce the stress. Okay. Again, they found here the effect size across all this data, 14 million people, and all these studies found that the ACE scores were a risk factor for mental health problems in almost all countries around the world. Okay, consistent across all countries. So this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not something just in your country, but it's around the world. Okay. So let me go through some more of the specific data that's backed by previous studies as well as this study. And so you can take this in and realize how the impact of something so long ago from your childhood could be impacting you now. Okay, so research shows that adverse childhood events such as domestic abuse increase the likelihood of future mental health issues by 4.13 times, so by 4 times. Okay. We also see domestic violence, right, increasing this risk as well. Okay, so individuals with a history of maltreatment had a 1.5 increased chance of experiencing mental health issues in the future. All right. Children who have experienced sexual abuse are 2.07 times more likely to experience future mental health issues compared to those without a history of sexual abuse. So again, when we're going through this data here about mental health issues, we got to be thinking physical health too, because remember, your mind and body are interconnected. So when you have mental health issues as a result of ACE scores, it's creating physical health issues as well. Remember that mental health creates the physical health issues, something that nobody talks about. I don't understand why. We think physical health is related to physical health. No, sometimes, but many, many times you're seeing here, this is a massive problem around the world where ACE scores have created mental, emotional health issues, which create physical health issues in the body. Those who had experienced childhood maltreatment in the past, based on other studies here, were 5.55 times more likely to experience mental health issues in the future. Those who are not, and this is corroborated by several studies. Okay. Again, like we said before, that early abuse in children may lead to brain development issues, such as decreased prefrontal cortex, altered hippocampal formation, altered another area of your brain called the corpus callosum. And we know the amygdala also can be altered, increasing susceptibility to mental health issues. Children who had a parent with mental illness issues are 1.73 times more likely to experience mental illness themselves in their lifetime. Okay. We also see bullying. So people who have been bullied, previous bullying has been linked to 1.99 times higher likelihood of future mental health issues. So 2 times as likely, right? So these are very significant findings, everybody, showing the power of things that have happened to us in the past causing mental health issues in the present. And again, that filters down in the body to create physical health symptoms. Compared to children without a history of neglect, so children or people who have been neglected or have a history of neglect in their family were 2.11 times more likely to experience mental health issues in the future. Okay, and several studies have found this result. And again, it says here for the same reasons that we're talking about, that neglect throughout childhood disrupts a child's brain development and information processing, increasing the likelihood that the child may experience mental health issues in the future. Also, research shows that children with a history of parental divorce are 1.66 times more likely to experience mental health issues later in life. Okay, not having the support of two parents, having the upheaval of separation does affect the child and later into life. Okay, so we see here that there's massive changes, right, and massive risk factors that come along with these ACE scores. And ACE scores, like I said, are very prevalent. They're throughout the world, very consistent. The more ACE scores somebody has, the more the brain has likely been affected and the higher the risk of having not only mental and emotional health issues, but physical health issues as well. I'll go over another piece of data down the road here on Evidence of the Week to show that how it affects the body physically, somatically, with health issues as a result of having ACE scores. So the takeaway, everybody, here is not that this is somber, this is bad, your life is over, you're screwed because this is how your childhood was. No, it's to give you the information, the understanding first, so you can see the impact of childhood on present moment, mental, emotional, physical health, and the fact that we can shift this through the neuroplasticity of the brain. We got to get going and working to shift the brain patterns that exist in us that have developed from childhood, create that internal safety and security, work with our emotions more, learn how to work with our attention and how we deal with what comes up in the body, change our thinking and our beliefs and our understanding, get back to life, shifting our behaviors, our getting over avoidance behaviors, shifting personality behaviors that we've learned, right? All these things I mentioned here are ways to shift your brain into a greater state of relaxation, safety, security. Okay. And what happens then is these somatic symptoms drop down. As your anxiety and depression reduce, so do the somatic symptoms. Remember, your anxiety and depression are probably two of the biggest things that cause these somatic symptoms. As we reduce those mental and emotional states, your somatic symptoms reduce. As we improve your emotion regulation skills and reduce alexithymia and your ability to work with emotions in a healthier way, somatic symptoms go down. As we get back to life, teach and show the brain that we can do things, we're safe to do things. The brain learns that, symptoms go down, right? As we learn to not focus on the symptom as much in a negative way, hypervigilance, learn to do somatic tracking, learn to move our attention away, symptoms go down in the body, right? But we're working at the brain level, everybody. The takeaway from today is that we're working up here to affect change in the physical body. We're not working at the body physical level. I think that's the key core understanding here, is that the brain gets affected from these ACE scores at a young age, and that leads to mental, emotional, physical health issues later in life. We need to shift our brains now to shift our bodies. I hope this is helpful, everybody. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. I'll continue to give you guys the data, the actual research that supports the work we're doing here. Again, if you do want support, you need support, which a lot of people do because this is hard to get through. That's what I'm here for, to work with you with your particular issues, work with your brains, get you focused, get you some goals going, get you working in this direction so you can heal, so you can feel better. Reach out if you need it. You can find me at thepainpt.com, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye now.